I never thought a quiet suburban street could turn into a war zone. But that's exactly what happened the day HOA Karen decided to make me her target. It started with a knock on my door, a knock that would have seemed innocent to anyone else. But I knew better. Karen wasn't known for playing fair. She had a reputation for bullying neighbors, issuing ridiculous fines, and twisting HOA rules until they fit her personal vendetta. But I didn't expect her to send a full team of goons to intimidate me. It all began when I noticed construction, crews on what I assumed was Karen's property. Days later, I realized her expansion wasn't on her lot. It was creeping onto my land. I confronted her, calmly at first. I explained the property lines, showed my deeds, and suggested a simple resolution. That's when she smirked, the kind of smirk that makes your skin crawl. "This isn't your neighborhood anymore," she said, her tone dripping with menace. 2 days later, I was walking to my mailbox when a black SUV screeched to a halt in front of my house. Out jumped 3 men wearing dark jackets and sunglasses, moving with the precision of trained professionals. Before I could react, one of them shoved me into my own fence. Pain exploded across my ribs and I fell hard to the ground. My neighbors rushed out, shouting, but the men ignored them, tossing my trash bins aside like they were toys. I barely made it inside, clutching my side as the adrenaline faded. My phone shook in my hand as I called. 911. The dispatcher assured me help was on the way. But in the back of my mind, I knew this was bigger than a simple assault. Karen wasn't just trying to scare me. She was testing boundaries, seeing how far she could push me before I fought back. Lying in the ER later that night, ribs bruised and back aching, I realized something important. Fear wasn't going to protect my property or my family. If Karen thought she could bulldoze her way through my life, she was about to learn the hard way that I don't back down. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would reclaim every inch she tried to steal, and I would do it in a way she would never see coming. Little did Karen know, sending goons after me wasn't intimidation, it was the mistake that would cost her everything. The next morning, my body was sore, my mind sharper than ever. Lying in that hospital bed, I reviewed every detail of the attack. Their timing, the precision, the sheer force. It wasn't random. Karen had planned it, and she thought she was untouchable. But she had one critical flaw: arrogance. That flaw would become my advantage. I started by documenting everything. Photos of the SUV, the damage to my fence, bruises on my ribs, and security camera footage from my neighbor's house. Every scrap of evidence I could find, I collected. I knew that if I wanted to take back what was mine, I had to be meticulous. And taking back didn't just mean protecting my property. It meant claiming the upper hand, legally and strategically. Then came the research. I pored over county records, property maps, and HOA meeting minutes. I discovered a shocking truth. Karen's expansion onto my land wasn't just a minor encroachment. It was blatant theft. Her mansion wasn't fully on her property. She had built at least half of it on my lot. Suddenly, the stakes were clear. This wasn't just about intimidation anymore. This was about exposing her lies, reclaiming my land, and turning the tables in a way she could never anticipate. I knew confronting her directly would be dangerous. After all, she had already proven she wouldn't hesitate to send people after me. Instead, I needed leverage. So I began quietly gathering allies, neighbors who had suffered under her rules, local officials who knew about her abuses, and a lawyer experienced in real estate disputes. By the time Karen realized I was fighting back, I would have a network ready to corner her from every angle. I also set a personal strategy. Karen thrived on fear and chaos, so I had to remain calm, almost untouchable. Every phone call she made, every email she sent, I documented. Every threat she whispered, every rule she twisted, I captured it. If she thought she could intimidate me into silence, she had underestimated the most important weapon in this fight: patience. By the end of that week, I had a blueprint for turning the situation around. Karen's goons had tried to scare me, but they had actually sparked the fire that would consume her plans. The mansion she built on my land, the intimidation, the threats. It all became evidence, and evidence is power. Little did Karen know, her own arrogance had handed me the key to everything. She might have thought I was broken, lying in a hospital bed, but in reality, I was plotting her downfall with precision. And when I moved, it would be unstoppable. I staged my move carefully, like a chess player setting a check that would take weeks to complete. First, I fed a false sense of victory to Karen. I answered her curt emails with bland civility. I returned polite waves at neighborhood events, and I never showed the strain that gnawed at me. Behind the smile, my team was assembling documents, witnesses, and a timeline that would make her look reckless and criminal. Next, I leveraged local regulations and a few sympathetic officials. A zoning inspector agreed to reevaluate the property boundaries after I presented the evidence. The HOA board members, many of whom resented Karen's heavy-handed tactics, quietly confirmed that several of her actions violated both bylaws and county codes. With each voice that joined mine, Karen's web began to fray. Then came the bait. I arranged a neighborhood meeting framed as a mediation session, public, recorded and mediated by someone neutral. Karen, predictably, volunteered to lead the charge, eager to reassert control and demonstrate her dominance. She didn't expect I had invited the county surveyor, the zoning inspector, and a legal reporter from the local paper. When she arrived, resplendent and smug, she believed she was walking into another triumph. The surveyor brought up the property maps first. He traced a line with measured certainty, and then paused at the mansion's edge. You could see the color leave Karen's face as the reality of her encroachment settled in the room like dust. The inspector followed with a list of permits never filed and construction, milestones that contradicted her claims. Karen tried to interject, to redirect the narrative, but every attempt only highlighted inconsistencies in her story. As the meeting unfolded, neighbors began to speak, some quietly, some with burning frustration. They recounted fines she had levied unjustly, threats she had made, and her penchant for rewriting rules to suit her whims. Each testimony was a small nail in a coffin built of lies. The reporter took notes, eyes flicking between Karen's face and the rows of documents that backed every charge. What finally broke her was not a single statement, but the accumulation, legal proof, public testimony, and the undeniable geometry of the land. Karen realized for the first time that her position was not invincible. She had believed intimidation was a permanent currency. I had turned that currency into a liability. By the time the meeting adjourned, Karen's allies were thin, her options shrinking. The inspector scheduled a formal review. The county opened an inquiry into the unpermitted construction, and the HOA board voted to suspend her privileges pending investigation, and watched her. Since the SUV, I slept without the cold knot of fear. The weeks that followed felt surreal, like living in a dream where reality was finally bending in my favor. Karen, once untouchable, was now under investigation, isolated from her board allies, and publicly humiliated. Her mansion, the very symbol of her audacity, was legally on my property, and the proof was irrefutable. But I didn't rush in. I let the law and the mounting evidence do their work while I prepared the final move. I had learned early that patience is a weapon. Karen's arrogance and impatience had always been her weakness. Every threat she made, every gloating email she sent, became part of the documentation I would eventually use. By now, her tone had shifted from confident to frantic, and the slightest provocation made her lash out. I didn't need to act aggressively. I just needed to wait. The county surveyor confirmed my ownership claims, drawing exact lines showing her mansion and surrounding property extending onto my lot. The zoning board agreed that several structures were built without permits and in violation of local codes. The HOA's legal counsel reviewed everything and confirmed that Karen had no legal standing to resist. Every piece fit together like a puzzle, and the picture was devastatingly clear. Karen had overstepped, and now the law was on my side. When the final hearing came, I attended quietly. Karen stormed in, expecting another showdown where she could assert dominance. Instead, She found herself cornered by facts, legal authorities, and the weight of her own actions. One by one, each infraction was presented, each overreach documented, until there was nowhere for her to hide. Her defiance crumbled in real time, leaving her red-faced and speechless. Finally, the judge confirmed the obvious. The land and the portions of her mansion built on it were mine. I could do with the property as I pleased. In that moment, the tension that had gripped me for months evaporated. The fear, the pain from the attack, the sleepless nights, they were all behind me. I had not only defended my home, but also reclaimed power over every corner of my land. Karen's empire, built on intimidation and deceit, had been dismantled by strategy, patience, and the law. Walking through the property now, I could see the mansion in a new light. It was no longer a symbol of oppression. It was a reminder of resilience. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate loudly. I simply walked the line of my property, feeling the satisfaction of justice done. Karen had tried to crush me, but her own ambition had delivered everything into my hands. And now, every inch of the land, every structure she had built illegally, belonged to me. Sometimes victory isn't about fighting harder. It's about being smarter, waiting longer, and letting the truth become unstoppable. Karen sent goons after me, but in the end, the only thing that mattered was that I stood firm. And now, I owned everything she ever tried to take. If you enjoyed this crazy HOA showdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next wild story. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done if Karen tried to mess with your property. And don't forget to like this video if you love seeing karma hit back hard.